Hey y'all, so today before we begin the figurative language note catcher and the bulk of it, we are going to just review those terms just to make sure everyone understands the basics before we move on to the interpretation part of our standard today. We're going to review simile, metaphor, personification, imagery, hyperbole, pun, and verbal irony. So a simile is a comparison of two unlike things using like or as. Remember, those words do have to make that comparison in order for it to be a simile. And a comparison is when you look at things to see how they are similar or different. Our next term is a metaphor. Now, a metaphor is a comparison of two unlike things. So we think about a simile and a metaphor. A metaphor may say, she is a snake, right? And we might be describing somebody who can't be trusted or something like that. But if you were to say she is as fast as a cheetah, you notice the second one that I just said has that as word and is comparing a girl to a cheetah, which means she's really fast. The as makes it a simile, while as the first example does not have either of those words, and so it's a metaphor. Always be careful when you're looking at comparisons and just kind of make sure you memorize that as best as possible so that you don't confuse those two words. Personification is giving an inanimate object human-like characteristics. Now remember, inanimate is something that is not living. Imagery is language that creates a mental image for the reader, and they do this using sensory descriptions. Sensory details appeal to the five senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So the language that's used is going to appeal to one, two, or all five of those senses, so that if you were to close your eyes, you can create a picture of whatever it is that is being described. Our next term is hyperbole. Now, this is a use of exaggeration to emphasize a point. Exaggeration is used to describe something as larger or greater than it really is. And emphasize is used to give special attention to something. So if I was to say, I'm so hungry I could eat a cow, if you do eat meat, right? You really wouldn't be able to break down and eat an entire cow, right? But you're exaggerating that. You can emphasize you're really hungry for whatever reason. That is a hyperbole. Now, a pun is a play on words based on two words that are close in sound but different in meaning. Now, it's a play on words, but it's also meant to be humorous. Usually when people tell jokes, they use puns. Our final term is verbal irony. This is using language that means the opposite of what you think it means for humor or for dramatic effect. So what I want for you guys to do right now is make a copy of the figurative language note catcher. That is work time A. Now take some time to ensure that all of your definitions are correct. You can go ahead and pause the video while you do that, but make sure that in your note catcher, in your anchor chart, you have all of your definitions that we just reviewed that matches the term inside of that box. So I'll wait just a second, and when you come back, we will move on. Okay, so thank you for coming back. I hope that you made sure to have all of your correct definitions. If you need to go back in the video, you're more than welcome. But we're going to look at the first box that says simile. So a simile is a comparison of two unlike things using like or as. Example, his thick tresses floated loosely around his head like the black tentacles of a sea monster. So this is in page 6 of our book. And so when you look at this sentence, you don't just want to say, oh, I found the simile, here's like. You want to dive a little bit deeper so that you can understand the meaning and why the author chose to use this simile. So here, thick tresses are being compared to tentacles by using the word like. You have to think to yourself, well, what could this simile mean? Now, we can make an inference based on this comparison. We know that tresses is the hair that grows on someone's head. When we hear the word tentacles on a sea monster, we may think of an octopus or Ursula, if you've ever seen The Little Mermaid, right? Therefore, we can say that we can infer that it means the dead man's hair is being compared to the tentacles because his strands are kind of maybe hanging in the water like the sea monster's tentacles would be. They're just kind of lounging around, kind of swaying in the water, going back and forth up in the air all over the place, right? And so when you think about how you can take your comparison and make an inference, that is a skill that transfers to each and every one of the terms that we reviewed. So what you guys are going to do is you're going to work either with your group or independently, depending on what your teacher says, and you are going to figure out the meaning or the inference of the figurative language examples on the note catcher. So that is one for every single term. Don't just say, oh, I found the comparison or I found the pun. Go ahead and take that step further and figure out what it means and what the author was trying to tell us. Once you are done, your teacher will give you directions on how to proceed. Have a wonderful day, y'all.